So you want a high score on the ToK exhibition? Well, getting that high score is a lot easier than it seems. Today, on ToK Today, I'm going to show you the crucial first step in getting that high score. Welcome to ToK Today. I'm Daniel and I enjoy writing and thinking about the theory of knowledge, the very simple clue as to how to get a high score on the ToK exhibition is to follow the mark scheme, or assessment instrument as IB call it. Now that's actually a bit easier said than done because the assessment instrument requires interpretation. You've got to know what it means and what the things on it look like when written down. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to demystify the assessment instrument, so keep watching. Now the first words on the mark scheme, or assessment instrument, ask whether an object is identified and whether its real-world context is specific. Now I've made a video on what makes a good object, so I'll link that above so I don't have to repeat myself here. Today, I wanted to focus on what is meant by the real-world context. In the most recent ToK subject report, the chief examiner comments that some students are mixing up the content of an object with its context. Content is defined as a description of what the object says. On the other hand, context is defined as the object's existence in space and time. Now it's worth taking a few moments to consider that definition of context. There's a specific direction in the assessment instrument and marks awarded for explanation of the real-world context of the object. Further, we know that context is defined as the object's existence in space and time. So what does that mean in reality? Well, the important point is that the explanation of the context needs to be linked to the prompt. Let me say that again. The explanation of the context needs to be linked to the prompt, and ideally linked to the knowledge claim or perspective that you are developing with this specific object. You do not need to include any information about context that does not link the object to the prompt, nor help to explain the knowledge argument. So let's look at some examples. Let's take prompt 8. To what extent is certainty attainable? Now imagine that we have written the knowledge argument that the degree to which certainty is attainable is dependent upon the value framework of the knower. The object that we've chosen is a fitness class in our local park, and the link is that the participants have varying degrees of certainty that physical exercise is linked to physical health, and that those varying degrees come from the different value frameworks of those knowers. Now, there are many aspects of the real-world context of this fitness class that could be described. For example, we could describe the geographic location of the park, the geographic location of the fitness class within the park, the days of the week and the times which the class is held, and the various exercises that are undertaken in the class, and so on and so on. However, the only elements of the real-world context that need describing are those that are relevant to our knowledge argument, and in this case, that is the degree to which certainty is attainable dependent upon the value framework of the knower. Therefore, we just need to know who attends the class and something about the interaction between their values and the values of the attendees and their certainty that physical exercise is linked to physical health. Let's look at a second example arising from prompt 17. Why do we seek knowledge? And we've decided to use the knowledge argument that we seek knowledge to solve problems. And the object that we have chosen are Edward Jenner's 1796 reports on his investigation to develop a vaccine for the disease smallpox. The link being that Jenner was seeking knowledge to solve the problem of smallpox. Now, there are many elements of the real-world context of Jenner's reports that we could describe. For example, we could describe what type of paper the reports are written on, the colour of ink that Jenner used to write the reports, the form of handwriting that Jenner used, the bag that Jenner would carry the reports around in. But none of these elements of the real-world context are relevant to the knowledge argument. All that we need to include are the details that Jenner was testing people with cowpox to see if they were also immune to smallpox in the hope that he could find a process of developing immunisation to smallpox. So what I hope that you are starting to realise is that it's not just making the connection between the object and the prompt which is important, but it's actually making the connection between the object's context and the prompt which is actually important. Now, let's spin the wheel of prompt and object to show how an object's context can be linked to the prompt. So first we'll spin the wheel of objects, and I've got a few generic examples of typical objects that we find in ToK exhibitions, and I'll refine them when I know what the prompts are. So click for the first object and it has stopped on medical equipment. So I have my first object will have to be a piece of medical equipment. And now I click for the second object and it stopped on a historical event for my second object. And now I'll click for the final object and it has come up with a piece of artwork. Now I'll do the same for prompts. The first prompt selected by spinning the wheel is prompt 31. That's how can we judge when evidence is adequate? And the second prompt chosen by the machine is prompt 17. That's why do we seek knowledge? We've already talked about that, but we'll do it again. And the final prompt chosen by the wheel is prompt 26. Does our knowledge depend upon interactions with other knowers? So for my first prompt, prompt 31, how can we judge when evidence is adequate? I'm choosing the world's first fMRI machine used at the Massachusetts General Hospital in 1991. The context is that this fMRI machine gave us better evidence of what is happening inside the body than any previous medical equipment. The knowledge argument being that we judge evidence to be adequate when it's better than any previous evidence. My second prompt is prompt 17, why do we seek knowledge? And I have to choose a historical event. So the historical event that I've chosen is the raising of the 16th century warship, the Mary Rose, from the English Channel in 1982. The context being that the Mary Rose ship represents an affirmation of national identity. The argument is that we may seek knowledge in order to confirm and to consolidate identity. The third prompt is, does our knowledge depend upon other knowers? And the object that I'm choosing is episode 65 of the Lonely Palette podcast. The context is that in this episode of the podcast, the host shows how people's knowledge of a painting by Botticelli changes as they interact with each other. The argument being that interaction with other knowers changes our perspectives. So every object has a context and you have to include details of its context in your exhibition, but only include the details that you should include that are relevant to the prompt and the knowledge argument that you are developing for that object. Now, it's really that simple. Follow those rules and you're well on your way to getting a high score in the ToK exhibition. And if you want more help with your ToK exhibition, be sure to check out the many resources that we have at ToK today. We have free ToK exhibition guides and blog posts, and we have ebooks, including the ever popular Every ToK Exhibition Prompt Explained. And we also offer online coaching and written feedback. Just go to the ToK Today website for more details. Well, I hope that today's little guide to the exhibition was useful and that you'll join me on the next one. Thanks for watching and stay ToKtastic, my friend. Bye.